Hi, welcome back to another TerranScapes video. Today I wanted to show you a work in progress, which I haven't done in a little while, of a short mountain piece that's going to be designed to receive the Forge World ruins of Amon or Amon Sol, the Weathertop ruins, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, which is featured in The Lord of the Rings. The customer is having me build 24-inch square modular boards, which is what's going to receive this piece. And I'll put a board under this so you can see it under, see how it's going to sit on the board. And because this piece is relatively large, this is about 20 inches across, tiling it with plaster cast rocks, which was my first thought, is really going to be a little bit too arduous, especially because it's curved. Trying to get the tiles to fit, I could make latex rubber molds and then be able to soft cast them onto it, but that's quite a bit of work. And then it made me think, well, let's take the opportunity then to perhaps look at a new kind of new style of cliffs. And so what I did is I had seen a piece done on the Hirst Arts site. If you haven't been to the Hirst Arts website, you should definitely go, because even if you're not building with his mold, there are several tricks and tips that are scattered about on the site that are really helpful for beginning terrain manufacturers or do-it-yourselfers or enthusiasts. And one of the things that he had done for his ruined tower piece, which is a set of a mold that builds a sort of a ruined tower that mimics in some essences the ruins in the Weathertop battle, but more importantly, he's mounted them on a cliff sort of hill. And the style that he did on that cliff hill is to model more of a sedimentary rock look, which is something that I haven't done to date. And I tried it once before, and it didn't really come out right, so I thought, let's try it again for this piece. And so I did a test mock-up I'm going to show you, and then I went ahead and did it on the entire mountain piece. So it's a bit of an experiment for me. I like the way it's coming out so far, and this is going to give you a chance to see it before it gets painted, assuming that the customer likes this as well. We'll move forward with it, and we'll get some paint on it, and I've got some other ideas about how I can learn a little bit more from this piece as I work through it. So let me show you a close-up of it, and we can talk a little bit about the test piece and some of my thoughts on where it's going to go from here. So one of the key aspects of the new style of carving is to try to mimic natural landforms where sedimentary rock has been eroded. And the Hirst Arts site, and I'll include a picture in this video, showcases some of the key features to keep an eye on when you're doing carvings to mimic natural landforms. So one of the things is that in sedimentary rock you have natural striations that go across as layers are deposited over time and compressed by, the forces of nature, whatever. What you end up with then are uneven bands scattered across the surface of the material. But you also get vertical grooves that carve into the material, rainwater running through it, crumbling features, weak areas, that sort of idea. And those are a little more irregularly spaced and are mostly vertical, but can vary from that quite a bit. So this was my test piece just to kind of get a sense of it. And one of the things is that when you carve it, you can then remove, certain pieces throughout it to create gaps, to expand and enhance some of the layering. And this seemed to be good enough for me to move forward. I felt like it was starting to capture that essence of sedimentary rock, and I hadn't really achieved anything like this before. Like I said, I tried it before, and it didn't really come out right, I didn't think, but taking another look at it, another go, I liked the way this went. So I decided to try to go for it for the major piece, and let me show you that. So here you can see the 24-inch square board, and because it exceeds the usable width of the foam, I have to trim the boards, and then I have to pin a section onto the boards. But the pinning is, pretty sturdy, and it actually comes out, I think, almost as strong or stronger than the actual board itself. One of the things you'll notice in this video are some horizontal striping from the lighting. I have some new fluorescent lighting on the way, but since this is a work in progress video, I thought I would just shoot this one just to get it up. This is under fluorescence, and the overhead fluorescence create that banding. I've got some new lights on the way, which I hope are going to eliminate that, as the camera seems to render colors better in the fluorescent light. But so anyway, getting back to this, here you see the board, and this is the mountain piece to fit on it. I'm going to have to hold it here because if I don't tip this, you won't be able to see it. And this is not designed to frame the Pink Panther, it just so happened to. Because the boards are 24 inches and I need a little space around the edges to be able to add some talus around it, and I've got some shale pieces which I'm going to use, which are going to reflect really well this stratified look, as they're going to, you know, flake and have a lot of flat spots. So I'm going to use some shale around the edges here to capture that. But you can see that in order to fit it on this, I need to come in a little bit, but I still need to preserve the footprint for the Forge World piece. The Forge World piece, according to the GW site, or the Forge World site, measures 16 inches across. So here I've shaded in the footprint that it's going to take up most likely, and tried to provide a little bit of border to give it a little extra room in case it's you know, a little irregularly shaped and needs an extra you know, half-inch here or there to fit on the top. That produces that's a huge piece. So in order to provide a walkway for the miniatures to be able to walk up to the top but still have a gradual enough slope so that miniatures won't tip, I can't raise this very high. My initial thoughts were to raise it, you know, say somewhere between 4 and 6 inches, and that's going to produce far too steep a gradient based on the amount of space I have on the board for miniatures to go. So I opted to drop that overall height down to about 3 inches, but that's still going to look very impressive on the tabletop, especially once you place the Forge World piece on top. You're going to have a pretty substantial monument in the middle of the table or wherever the board ends up. Let's take a look at this, a little edge on here. So here you get a side profile of the slope going up, and the slope does support miniatures quite well, even, you know, ones that are a little larger. So you're able to have miniatures walk up the slope, creating a semi spiral that goes around the side here. You can see I've done the carving along the sides. This takes quite a while. It took me about 5 hours to do all of this carving by hand, and unfortunately it's not going to be something that I can easily replicate, say, through molding it and casting it, because one of the things that I like about this, and we'll see how this paints up, but I like some of these very large open gaps that go kind of, you know, deep in. Now that's going to fill in a little bit with paint, I suspect, but you're still going to have these gaps which give the impression of pieces that have fallen out, and really helps to accentuate the sedimentary sort of stratified layers of this. As I started to work around the piece, one of the things I was trying to reduce in appearance is the appearance of two circles glued together. So you can see here, you know, that there is some, you know, you can see the border of the top piece here a little bit more defined. But this is going to end up getting a little bit of flocking and soil here, and I'm going to add some bushes that are going to crop up and break up some of this transition between these two, and I think that's going to conceal it fairly well. One of the other things I decided to do is try to go in and actually remove sections, you know, that break up the heights that you see around the edges to kind of give it a less unified look, and I think that's going to help blend it together as well. Here you can see a little projection coming off, and then here I've removed a little bit of material. Again, excuse the lighting, as I can't really light this as evenly as I'd like to, based on just using a couple of fluorescents that I just happen to have in the house. So hopefully it's going to improve by this weekend, actually. This gives you another perspective on it as well. So one of the things that I'm thinking about is giving this a base coat of paint, latex paint primer, and then maybe spraying this with a you know, what's the word I'm looking for? It's the Rust-Oleum textured paint. That texture paint, I think a light application around it is going to give it a little bit more of a rocky appearance rather than having some of the smooth areas that are on the foam. And I think that's going to break this up and add a little bit more realism to it. But I can't spray that obviously until I base coat it, because the spray will erode the foam. So I'm really going to wait and see how the priming goes, and I think the priming might be a little challenging, as trying to get paint into these areas that are deep is always a trick. I usually use a spray gun for this kind of large-scale basing, and I think the spray gun will help drive paint into these cracks and crevices, and then I can just, you know, brush it in with a soft brush, and that should hopefully give me good coverage. So that's just a quick look at how the piece is coming. And if this gets approval, we'll move forward with this, and we'll get this painted up and then flocked and vegetated, and I think it's going to look pretty nice when it's done. It's an unusual piece. Again, it's a new technique I haven't done before, so we'll see how that comes out. So, just before I go, it suddenly occurred to me while I was finishing up carving this, taking a look at this test piece, you know, one of the things that's important with any terrain piece I produce is to try to maintain as high level of durability as possible. So while this is fairly durable in terms of there isn't a lot of loose pieces that are going to come off, as you actually have to rub this with your thumb to separate the layers, to get that look, to pull out those pieces. And I'll put a link down below to the Hirst Arts page where I drew some of this inspiration. It's a fantastic page for anybody out there who's interested in recreating landforms. But it occurred to me, though, that this might be a good application for the new Hot Wire Foam Factory's product, Styroplast. And if you haven't seen the video I did initially taking a look at it, you should look at the channel and find that video. But it's because it's a plastic with a pretty low viscosity when it's initially mixed, and high strength even in thin coats, it might be just the right thing to brush into this kind of a carving to retain the detail but improve its strength quite a bit. And I've done a little testing with the Styroplast, some initial looks at painting it with some primers. Seems like it holds primer all right, but this gives me a chance to actually finish a piece as a test and see how that comes out before I progress to the full piece. So, and it gives me an opportunity to look at the Styroplast a little bit closer. So I'm going to do that over the next day or two, and do another revisit of the Styroplast once this is set up, and we can talk about that a little bit more, and we can learn together about it. So, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at the work in progress on this piece. If you want to see any of the work that I've done to date, you can always go to TerranScapes.com. And if you've watched these videos, you know the general routine. Comments down below are welcome. Mike at TerranScapes.com if you want to email me. Keep an eye on the newsletter, because that's got updates on what's changing on the site for the store reopening coming up very soon. And I hope you enjoyed this look, and keep your eye on the channel. I've got a lot more videos coming out pretty soon, so I think a couple projects you're going to like, so don't go away, and I'll talk to you soon.